What many people don't realize is that occupational therapy started in mental health care. They started in psychiatric facilities, helping individuals to have functional activity to affect their state of being and their functioning in their environment. My favorite occupational therapy quote comes from Mary Riley, and it's man, through the use of his hands, as they are energized by mind and will, can influence the state of his own health. So, man, through the use of her hands, as they are energized by mind and will, can influence the state of her own health. So, the premise is that therapeutic activity, functional activity, purposeful activity can help people in recovery and to be more functional in society. Um, and so this began in the field of psychiatry, psychiatric rehabilitation. And in those days, they used things like floor looms and weaving and all the woodcraft and all these different types of things. And when I went to OT school, I went off in 1988 to Elizabethtown College in Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania, and it was a long-standing occupational therapy program. And it was founded on these basics. And our therapy department had floor looms. We had a wood shop with materials. We did all kinds of, we learned crochet and knitting and woodworking and all kinds of different activities like this. We did a course in clay and pottery making. And we learned these things as a way of using these tools to function with individuals. Now, after World War One, I think it was World War One, occupational therapy had a new focus in moving into physical rehabilitation, right? Using these same strategies to help people overcome physical disabilities. So this quote, it highlights the connection between intention of manual activity and physical health and improvement. So occupational therapy is always focused on work, play, leisure. So how our mind and body are functioning together to do our daily activities, to engage in leisure tasks and, work tasks, whether it's being a student or whatever your job or activity could be, everything from a parent and a caregiver. So this premise guides my profession and it's become a part of me and in the back of my mind. So flash forward, it's around 2010 and I have a child who's dealing with severe anxiety. And I started thinking about man, through the use of their hands, as they're energized by mind and will, can influence the state of their own health. I had an 8-year-old who wanted to learn to knit. And I kept thinking this would be a great thing to engage her in a purposeful activity to help engage her mind. And I had a friend who came over and she taught my daughter and her friend to knit and to crochet. I also took that time to learn to crochet myself. When I was young, my grandmother taught me the basics of making a chain. And I remember making like a 3 or 4 foot long crochet chain. And I never really asked her how to do more than that. So 30 plus years later, I tell my friend, tell me how to do a little bit more. And so I learned how to make a square and how to do a couple different stitches. And our daughter's now 23 and she does all kinds of knitting and she takes it with her everywhere. It's one of those activities in knitting and crocheting, you could take it on the bus. I took it on the train when I traveled by train, on a car trip while you're sitting watching TV. My daughter takes it to the movie theater. Having our hands, it's engaged in activity, helps our mind. And it's, there's fidget toys and things, but this is functionally making something, right? So we make something, whether it's something pretty or it's a functional thing. I moved on from squares to
Big switch.
knitting crocheting washcloths. And I followed a pattern. For me, watching visually to learn was helpful to me. Some people can read a pattern. There's lots of different ways to do it. But for me, I have a favorite crochet YouTuber and I watch her videos to learn new stitches. And initially, I just did some basic ones for years and years. And so the basic washcloth pattern with cotton yarn. And then I realized, it would be also be helpful to have larger that are more like a paper towel, right? You can use them to dry vegetables off, and you can make them in all kinds of pretty colors. Um, and my first blanket I undertook, we'll have to have a picture of this. I made a whole bunch of crocheted squares, and then I decided to put
Oh
them
my, yeah.
together to make a king size blanket. And I didn't follow patterns and plans, and so my squares were all slightly different and different yarns. And I think it was my son's girlfriend who said, "Are you going to make a specific, pattern or put something in it?" And so I decided to put the letter G because our last name is Grodoff,
And
not
your
G.
name is Gina, so it could be
Um,
the one.
and so that was this huge project that spent years doing. It was a big task because it was spread out on the bed to connect all the squares together. And so then I learned how to do a blanket where you can just sit in your lap and crochet and crochet and crochet. And I've learned several different um, styles and patterns, and they're fun to make. They're great to give as gifts to keep us warm when it's cold. And I remember I learned to do the shell stitch. My grandmother, who crocheted her whole life till I think her arthritis in her hands stopped her, everyone had a blanket made by her. I have a shell stitch blanket, pink and white, that she made for me when I was young. She crocheted baby outfits. When our older daughter was born, she was the first girl that had been born in a while, and she had this beautiful hat, sweater, and booties in pink, all crocheted. And she did all kinds of intricate crochet work as well as, blankets and other things. And it's so special to have those items. I have a bigger kind of toddler size coat I passed on to one of my cousins when they had a child. And so it's been a fun hobby for me, and it's I've seen the benefits of it, like I learned about as an occupational therapist.
Well, hello, this is Don,
And this is Gina with Focused Healthy Family.
and this is podcast number 210. And today, well, I don't want to have time for this. That's what we're calling the podcast today because
I
it's about
don't
hobbies.
really have time for this, as in hobbies. I'm a caregiver. I'm taking care of my kids and my parents. Who has time to do a hobby, right?
Yeah.
So, and yet when we don't take care of ourselves, what happens, right? Or maybe your loved one is passed, and now what? So we're going to look at that today.
Well, and you didn't really mention that, but you kind of passed it along to our youngest too. I mean, she doesn't do it as much as
Yeah,
everybody
she
else.
was, goodness, if Abby was 8, she was a year and a half. And she used to take the knitting needles and a ball of yarn and just kind of do this. But then she learned pretty young to crochet, and she did it for a while and she did knitting for a while. So she's done it on and off. But
When
yeah, it's
you have a daughter-in-law that can do
oh
some
goodness.
wonderful things with this Christmas was
Our son's partner
unbelievable.
is she's made sweaters, gorgeous, gorgeous items. Yes, it's and she's like, I don't have much money, but she makes these gorgeous gifts that are
Oh
just
yeah, that sweater she made
so
for me, and
appreciated. And yes, you'll have to wear your sweater next
yeah,
podcast on.
yeah.
You would never know they were handmade.
No,
Mm.
no, like something you'd buy at Kohl's or someplace even bigger than that. But we have do you want to do jokes first?
Sure. I used to like origami as a hobby, but I gave it up as it was too much paperwork. And what's
Uh,
our tip for today, Don?
well, I actually found a list of tips for new hobbies, and there's like 50 in it. So I'm not going to put the whole thing up here. I'll put that up on the website afterwards if you want to go to the website to get it. It comes from Familyhood Central, whatever that is. I just kind of found it. But here are some of the tips that the first one they start out with, I thought was a good one. It's start smart. You know, so when you begin, don't try to get all the skills in one
So
shot.
this is learning a new hobby.
Yeah, learning, yeah, new hobby, and it's building your skills to where you need to be. They talk about asking questions, and the next one down, or one of the ones down, is a 10, or break it into where am I at here? Listen to podcasts, ask questions, and listen to podcasts. Kind of go together because I think like you're watching some videos on how to do your crocheting. It's same for any hobby. It's a way of learning. Somebody else has done it. They give you the ideas to help you to go through it. Well, one of them is break it down, make it in smaller parts. Don't try to do one when you're learning the skill anyway. You want to take it step by step to really get it. Uh, Attend events. I talk about my brother-in-law does flying. The little planes. Well, I shouldn't say little. They're pretty good sized little planes that he flies
Remote
around.
control
But
planes.
he goes to different events and things like that for it. And it talks about balancing your fun with learning. That it's not just something you get into and it's just something you learn. You want to have some fun at it too. So, like I said, there's 50 of these in here, so I'm not going to read all of them, but I will put it up there for you to find out some more if you're wanting to, like myself, wanting to build a new hobby. There's some good tips for you there.
So talking about hobbies and building new hobbies. And I found on agingcare.com a question that someone posed. What activities as a caregiver can you do at home to relax, be centered, maintain friendships? The question is, I'm needing to fit more activities for my own self-care, self-development, as I'm looking for some ideas that I can do at home. I'd like to do what I can from home to maintain a sense of self in all of this, maintain friendships, maintain family connections, stay fit and positive while I'm caring for my parent. My parent goes to a day program, 4 hours or so a day. So what can I do while they're there? Asking others what they do. And so it's interesting kind of reading through some of these responses because this is real, right?
Mhm.
People talk about, looking for online classes through colleges if there's something you want to pursue. One person on here talked about how they went and got their associate's degree at the age of 70 something, spent years doing it, but it was a goal they had. They didn't have any job that they were going to, but they just that accomplishment that they wanted to complete that. And so think of anything you're interested in learning. You can look online and find online classes as well as in person. But for many of us, the time to do that can be challenging. Um, let's see, having other things you used to enjoy. Wait, there was playing the piano, doing some kind of craft work. How can you incorporate some of that today? Can you take an aspect of it that you'd be able to do on the go, right? While you're sitting and waiting, if your loved one goes in the hospital a lot, some crafts and hobbies you can take with you and do in those small bits of time that you had. Um, Someone mentions going on next door to connect with new neighbors. How do I have any time for that? I'm so busy caring for someone. And yet, this is the frantic person that's overwhelmed, right? And if you can't make a little bit of time for yourself, even 15 minutes a day or 30 minutes once a week, then you're really heading quickly towards burnout if you're not already there and you're not taking care of yourself and you're going to pay for it over time with exhaustion and burnout, and it really can have a toll on your physical health. Um, as someone actually replied that they do crochet. They make lots of washcloths. They're small, they're quick, they're easy, and they make them in different colors. They give them to their friends and family until they have too many. I shared this with my daughter, and she said, "Are you sure you didn't write that, Mom?"
Yeah.
Um, Gardening, you can do an inside or container garden. Um, Getting out of the house. Someone talks about the importance of getting out of the house. Someone's explored genealogy. Again, these things we can do online. I know our local library here in Rowan County has a whole genealogy area of the library to explore things like that. And it can be good to get out of the house. Sometimes we need to take that time when we have a little bit of time to ourselves. Maybe we have someone coming in to assist or something, or a loved one goes somewhere. Maybe you need to run errands, but can you also take a little time to do something? Or, ask someone else to run an errand or find a way to take a little bit of time for yourself, whether it's just walking around a bookstore for 15 minutes, in between errands, going into some hobby shop or somewhere, you've always been curious, just walk around, just opening your eyes to new ideas and possibilities and getting yourself out of that rut of getting this done and that done and this done and caring for this person and that ongoing need to take care of others. It's draining. Um, Someone talks about they have a treadmill that they use. Um, Someone talks about thinking about what you used to enjoy doing. And oftentimes that's something, if you learned to crochet or knit years ago, you could probably pick it up pretty quickly again. And maybe you're interested in something new that you'd like to learn. If you're really in the throes of caregiving and the stress of it, learning something new might not be for you at that moment. But what about when your loved one passes? What about when, the level of care changes, when they have to go somewhere and you're no longer there, taking care of them 24/7, think about what you might want to do. At least make a list or look up some information about, I'm going to, take the time to do this or that. Um, Start investing in it now by doing some research. People talk about getting massages, foot rubs. Um, I recently got an app on my phone that does a workout, and it's a Tai Chi workout. And I turn it on, and the first few are like 3 or 4 minutes, and it's like you take your loved one to the bathroom, and you're sitting there waiting. You could you could do something like that. You can also there's games that you can do on your phone, from crossword puzzles to all kinds of fun little games. And when you're busy doing this and that and the other, taking a few minutes for that, it can be enjoyable to find just a little bit of fun in your day. Um, Outdoor activities. This person says, I save my favorite TV shows so that when her parents are asleep, she has the guilty pleasure of watching that for a little bit. Someone makes Christmas presents with knitting and crocheting. Um, so thinking about that having something that you enjoy doing for pleasure is important at all stages of our life. Um, Children learn through play, especially in their early years. And it's so important throughout our years and after retirement. I've worked with so many people who've recently retired and all of a sudden they get sick or they don't have things to do. They're less active, which can lead to illness and falls and injury. And, I've talked about this because being an occupational therapist and learning these things. I've always valued the balance of work and life and having enjoyment. And I know I've talked with you, Don, many times about, what are your hobbies? And that was a question for you, Don.
My hobbies. Um, I was just thinking of one that I've kind of started back a little bit, but it's like riding my bike. And it's not a hobby I can take anywhere, but it is something that I really enjoy. I just gotta well, right now I can't go out in the slush we have going on right now, but I want to get back into it this spring and to getting more bike riding out. Doesn't have I don't know if I'll do it. My brother does he goes 30, 40 miles on a bike, and I don't think I'm going to do that, but I will get out and start riding because I've enjoyed it all my life. When I was a kid, that was a big thing for me to be able, when I got my bike, it was like a new freedom for me to get out and explore myself. And we used to live near the river, so I'd ride down to the river, and that was a wasn't too far to ride, but it was an enjoyable ride, and I'd like to get back to doing that.
We had a lot of fun when our youngest learned to ride a bike. We would go biking together, and there's some great greenways in the greater Charlotte area for biking. And yeah,
We've
it's a fun activity.
we've got them to they're hanging up right now, but we can get them down.
We have them in the garage. Reading can be a good hobby. I know everybody gets you books for Christmas, Don. You enjoy
Oh
reading.
yeah, it has to be now. I do a lot of reading at night. I've got to do more, like spend a little time in the day to do like um, oh, learning stuff and mind boggling stuff, for increasing my mind
Kind
thought
of
process and stuff like
self-help and
self-help,
self-care
yeah.
kind of books,
And
but
then at night it's got to be more of mysteries and things like that I
autobiographies
can
and
lose myself in, to help me go get to sleep and stuff. So,
yeah, disappearing into a good story can be a wonderful escape from the struggles. Um, just like watching a movie or a show, but reading now we can read on our phone. There's Kindles, there's ways that you can have it without having to have a physical book. Accessing libraries, there's so many free libraries out there to access books, um, virtually. And of course, everybody loves a good physical book to hold, or at
oh
least
yeah,
some many of us do. And books are portable, right?
yeah.
We can read a few pages while we're waiting for somebody. So what if it takes us a long time to read the story? That's something that we can do in small increments of time and kind of disappear for a while. Um,
Well, I talking about like you mentioned, our youngest took on um, knitting, but she also we went through a lot of stages of trying different things. She tried whittling, which was kind of fun. I was hoping with that. She wanted to play the organ, so we got the organ in there. I think these things kind of build on themselves. They may not happen right at the moment, but they can kind of build on themselves. And it's kind of fun to watch them decide what's going to be the best thing for them to take on and live with. So,
and this is something to think about too with your loved one. Do they enjoy piano and maybe you don't have room for a piano? You can get a keyboard, a reasonably priced one. We have one that's actually got pedals to go with it. That's how our son took piano lessons on. And it's an electronic keyboard, but you can get small portable ones and different things. If someone enjoys music, or having other some kind of music game that they can play, there's so much you can do on different electronic devices or just, a simpler version of something. Um,
some
there's
people like modeling, like as a kid, I put together some cars where and I still think that goes on, but even that are Legos, building some different. Um, even one of our friends used to put together big Lego. Um, I want to say like Star Wars
Yeah,
stuff,
Star Wars kits. So you buy Lego kits and different
and you put them
things,
together.
and there's also connects. So things you might have enjoyed as a kid. Maybe your kids have moved out and these things are in your house. You can still have fun. Our son was really into the connects, and
Mm.
he got it was a Ferris wheel, and it literally spun around and had little buckets for the cars and people to go in them, and we can enjoy these things at any age. Um,
Yeah.
Talking about making models, clay. There's a lot of different types of clay. When the kids were little, they came out with this quick hardening, like not really a Play-Doh, but it dried over time. You mold and make something with it, and then you just let it dry, and it hardens, and not hard like a ceramic or pottery, but firm enough for a fun little thing. So these things we can do at any age. Go into any hobby store or section of a department store. And adult coloring books have become a huge thing. That's something you can take with you. You can do coloring apps on an iPad or other device that you can do on the go.
Well, you think about, like you said, I think that I see a lot with retired people that they want to do something, they I, it's hard for me to think about quitting a job because I like what I do and all that. But when you do and you don't have somewhere to go to or be in, it's good to have something to be able to fill your time. And a lot of times they'll even be doing things like making jewelry and stuff that they can actually sell for a little bit if they need to. So I think that's important as we retire to think about that of what we're going to do when we get out of the retirement or when we get into retirement.
Yeah, my mom, since my father passed, started volunteering at a local elementary school, tutoring real young kids. She used to be a teacher, and she's really enjoying it. And it's been a long time since she's done any teaching. So there's so many different volunteer opportunities that we can get involved in, whether it's the library or a youth program or even a senior center. Lots of seniors volunteer at senior centers. Um, but yeah, that sense of purposeful activity, we have quite a few people where I work at the independent living community. And for a while, we had a speech language pathologist, and it was wonderful because we both address things like cognition and our social functioning. And there were several people there that just needed a purpose. They needed something to do. And you're retired, you're maybe widowed, you live in this building. There's activities that go on, but maybe it's not things you enjoy, having some sense of purpose. So finding a way to connect with some people are we found they're helping another resident who needed more assistance and because they wanted that sense of helping someone else. And so connecting with the activities department, life enrichment, if your loved one lives at a facility or if you yourself do, even an independent living community, finding out what could you do to help? Could you help handing out information or looking things up online or so many different ways. If there's events or activities, I went looking for a resident the other week, and they had hosted a activity down in the main area, and I saw her helping to clean up and put the things away, and I'm like, how perfect, this person has very limited ability with her memory, and yet she can still engage even with her walker. Her balance is good enough. She was carrying some items into the from the where they had things out in the lobby and to help put things away and just that sense of I could tell the confidence she had in doing these things because I offered to carry something and she's like, oh, I'll make another trip, I'll come back and get it, and allowing those people to help and do those things. Maybe your loved one lives with you and they want to make the beds. Let them, don't tell them no, you don't have to do that. If you're concerned about their safety, um, get an occupational therapist involved, get orders from a doctor for home health occupational therapy services, and have them assess their safety doing these activities. This is a big part of what I do working with senior populations is, things that they want to be able to do or feel, they need to do. How can we do them safely? How can we modify the activity so that they can do it with, out injuring themselves or leading to a fall? So, as your loved one goes through care in different levels, and even yourself and the care that you need, there's different resources out there that can really be a big help. I know, Don, you were recovering last year from your stroke and your heart attack. And I can only imagine how frustrating that was because you're so used to just in your free time, you've always had a office in the house and you just go and you do work, and you weren't at a place where you could just jump in and do that. And
I couldn't get the words out. I mean, I still have some trouble with getting the words out, but even then, so even if I tried to do something, I tried to come in here to into this what we call the studio in our house and try to get something done, and it was a little difficult. I remember that it was only about 2 weeks home from the hospital, and I had an interview with somebody, and I didn't have the time to cancel it. So I had to, the night before, I pulled out every bit of information I had and read over it and read over it and read over it so that I'd have some kind of way of being able to answer her on certain questions. And she said I did well at it. But yeah, that it is frustrating because you I, I didn't have hobbies, but my work was a big thing for me. I enjoy it a lot, and
I'm trying
not
to, did
being,
you try reading,
I couldn't. I had trouble
concentrating on
reading.
it? Okay.
I couldn't. There's just I didn't have the patience for it. I didn't have the thought for it. It wasn't there. I'm into it now, and I'm reading a lot better now. But yeah, it was that was difficult. Even I'm watching TV was okay, but there was again, you get all this words mixed up in your mind, and it's hard to get them to straighten out and the sound right to you. You know what I a lot of times what I was putting out wasn't always what I meant to be putting
So the
out.
stroke Don had affected his language skills, his ability to express what his thoughts were in words. So he knew what he wanted to say, but getting
Um,
the words out was challenging. And I still remember, Don, the first text I got from you in the hospital. Because even doing communication via text was challenging,
mhm,
and it was like so powerful to see. You said hello or something or good morning to me, and I'm like, wow, that's huge progress. That you were
yeah,
doing that because yeah, I did notice you watched a lot of TV initially, and probably because everything else was overwhelming
mhm.
and you would get like really engrossed in a show, and maybe it took a lot of mental effort to pay attention to do it. Like you said, the areas of your brain that were affected your patience and some processing of information, which made things like reading harder. But yeah, it was interesting just to see that shift. And some people might have had a mild or stroke like you had and recovered, but didn't go back to reading or didn't, you work as a speaker. And so you focused on building those skills again. And so I could see where people just become complacent
Yeah.
and stop. And when you stop exercising that brain and be like, oh, I used to enjoy that, but I don't now. Well, if you don't work at it, it's not going to come back. It's going to continue to be difficult. I want to say after your first heart attack, you talked about it was harder to read. You struggled a little bit.
Oh yeah, that took me a long. That took me probably a year to really gain any of that back because it just it was like it wasn't even about reading. It was just looking at it made it difficult to even be able to look at. It was really kind of weird. Like I said, it wasn't all just about reading certain words and getting them mixed up. It was just looking at it. It would wear me out.
Yeah. Yeah, taking in the information, it can be exhausting. Think about young kids who have learning challenges or not. It takes a lot of brain power.
Yeah.
You have to identify the shapes on the page, figure out what their meaning is, understand the word, and then putting that together in sentences and complex ideas and thoughts. It does take a lot of mental brain functioning and
Well, actually, right before we started this, I was looking for one other thing, but I pulled out of my thing, and they were some activities that the speech therapist gave me that I'm going to work on again. I worked on them with them, but it's just adding, you know, as an example, as you're getting ready to do a project, is define all parts of the project, and so that's kind of thing I want to kind of work on because that's just building my kind of my vocabulary, my thought process. So
And when you did come home from the hospital, I remember we played some word games. We played, did we play bananagrams? We did some games with words and making words. Bananagrams is kind of like a Scrabble. You get letters and you form words in your own
yeah.
little board, separately from someone else trying to get rid of all your tiles. And I remember you came up with some things that were not words. Um, and yet, it's something you enjoyed. You've always enjoyed Scrabble. And so we had fun with it. We played some card games that were challenging to you
Mhm.
and following the rules again. And, the fact that you had those activities you enjoyed before. And this is tricky, when we're dealing with a loved one who maybe never had a hobby or their hobbies were such. I'm thinking about my dad. His hobbies were golfing, fishing, and woodworking, very physical activities. And when you're
Yeah.
limited physically to do those things, it left him, without a lot of fun activities. He watched funny TV shows that he enjoyed, but those activities that he could no longer do, I kept trying to figure out a way to I know when he was going to the adult center, they tried to bring out some wood things for him, but to him that was frustrating. He didn't
Hmm.
want to do something simple with the wood. It was something he used to be good at, and he was very aware he wasn't, and it just got him really frustrated every time they brought that out. So that's something to think about for yourself and those you're caring for, wanting to help engage them in something they enjoy is maybe if it was something they're really good at, they might just get super frustrated that they're not anymore.
Yeah.
My favorite thing is having them teach someone else and someone else who doesn't necessarily need to learn a whole lot. But, mom, remind me how this recipe goes and let them tell you or a grandchild, how to do something and just be on board that it's okay if they mess up or they make a
Hmm.
mistake with it. One of the people I work with at work she hadn't cooked in a while. They left their house and moved into our independent living where they serve all your meals and you only have a very small kitchenette in the building I work in. So there's not much of a kitchen for most people to be able to cook. And she wanted to make a special fruit cake she made at the holidays and she made it. She said it didn't come out right. And she was thinking it was the pan. She was, and maybe it was. It could have been something like that. And it also could have been, you know, who knows? Was she measuring it exactly? Was there something different, with how she's doing it and not realizing that? Um, but not having to point out those flaws to people. But so thinking about ways to simplify things and how can you incorporate some things you enjoy, or if you want to learn a new hobby, what research, what things can you do now? Because it's about having things you enjoy doing and having that be a part of your life. And doing in a way that's helpful to you. Because my favorite quote um, man, through the use of their hands, as an energized by mind and will, can influence the state of their own health. So think about that for yourself, for your children, for your family members, your aging loved ones that you might be caring for, or if you're a caregiver in any capacity. And thank you for joining us here at Focused Healthy Family. We really hope you've enjoyed this conversation and it gives you something meaningful to think about and reflect on. Don and I would love to hear from you. So please take a moment to leave a comment, a share, a like, subscribe to our podcast, check out our website with additional information. Share this podcast with someone else that you think might enjoy it. Be sure to check back on all the different topics that we've covered over the past, are we at 3 or 4 years, Don?
Probably 4 years now.
Um,
Yeah.
we've covered so many different topics. We've had so many different guests on, everything from dealing with caregiving of children, self-care, and caring for aging loved ones. If you're struggling to stay calm in your day, if you're having panic, if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you listen to this podcast and went, "Who has time for that?" Take a few minutes and look at Don's EFT series. People describe EFT as weird, but then after they work with him a few sessions, we might say, well, wait, this is weird, but it works. What can EFT do to help you? So look into the information on our website for Don and EFT and tapping. If you're seeking challenges, looking for information and ideas for caring for an aging loved one, be sure to visit our senior care page for support, resources, and guidance. And you can also find other helpful wellness tips and tools at focusedhealthyfamily.com. Connect with us on social media. You can find us on Facebook at Focused Healthy Family, Instagram, Focused Healthy Family 1, and YouTube at Focused Healthy Family. If you are watching us on this podcast on YouTube, you can also listen anywhere you listen to a podcast and vice versa. And so be sure to check that out. Please share it with others and let us know what's been helpful and what you'd like to hear more of. Join us each Thursday for a new episode of Focused Healthy Family Podcast at focusedhealthyfamilypodcast.com. And again, listen anywhere you listen to your podcasts. And remember, how you speak to your children and your loved ones today shapes their future and yours.